Thank you, thank you. And you do have what it takes, and I have what it takes, and that's really what this lesson is about today. So, we always like to have some fun around here, and the calling it getting your MBA and becoming a metaphysical badass had only to do with a conversation I think Dan and I were having with Neil and a bunch of people. Sometimes we stand around and you have no idea what's going to fall out of our mouths. But some of it is gems, some of it not. I try to grab the gems and let go of the other stuff. And I thought that this was a gem because there is practicing metaphysics is a lifelong journey. Some of us are only interested in, let's compare it to going to school. Some of us have no interest past elementary school. But you know what? If you only practice metaphysics to the degree at the elementary level, you're in good shape. You're in really good shape. After that, it gets hard. But it gets deep. And the deeper it gets, the more it calls for you to really be you. But there's so much to know, and there's so much study, and there's so much education. And only some of us want that. Now, I outrightly admit to my prejudice. In the past, I thought that if you didn't want to have the MBA, or if you didn't want to have the doctorate, I thought you weren't serious enough. I admit that. That in my mind, I had this idea and I thought everybody wanted to go there. I thought everybody wanted to get to that place of, being the Dalai Lama or the Pope. But the truth is, there's many levels before that deep, full, immersed experience that's very potent. It is very, very potent. And the more I engage the world, and now I'm engaging the world in a slightly different way because I'm on CSL leadership. And you would think that would be a perfect place to engage the world. Let me tell you something. Every place I go, any place that I serve, any team that I'm on, you've heard me say this, any subcommittee that I'm on, and I have been service to many at many levels in our organization. Any place where I serve, I'm telling you the purpose is to learn how to get along. You might think you're doing something else. You might think you're doing marketing. You might think you're doing fundraising. You might think that you're creating a deep spiritual experience for someone else, but I'm telling you, hands down, you're there to learn how to get along. First with yourself and then with everyone else. Because it is the microcosm to the macrocosm. And if you don't know what that is, what that means is that the entire world, the entire universe lives contained within you. So there's nowhere to go. There's nothing to fix outside of you. And the sooner we learn that, the sooner we stop trying to fuss with the outside. Now, the political scene right now has been a little tempting. It's been hard for me. So I admit I didn't watch the last 2 debates. I went and watched some kind of trash TV. I'm like binging on Blacklist, trying to catch up on the old ones. I would rather watch Blacklist than watch what's been going on. And so I'm a little freer. I'm a little more distant. I'm still going to pay attention. I'm still going to vote. I'm going to do my due diligence as a citizen. But I just decided not to drag my heart over the coals. I just decided it wasn't necessary. So I'm not. And that's the way I'm going to do it. So when you came in today, you were all given a list. Hopefully everybody has that list of the 10. And I put down 10 things. Why? Because 10 is a nice round number. If you don't have it, we can get you one. But I put down 10 things that if you only practice, if you don't have one, you could raise your hand and Gary Frank will give you one. Oh, looks like okay. So, and there's a couple over here too, Gary. So the first thing I put down is stop lying. Now, what I really mean by that, and I mean, maybe you do lie, maybe you don't. I know I grew up lying. And I grew up lying because it was my protection. It was the way I survived a really unfriendly childhood. So I lied. I lied in every direction all the time. I lied so much that even as a young adult, I had to figure out that I didn't have to lie. You might ask me a question, and I might think I had to lie. Like, oh, I don't actually have to lie. But I had to learn to do that. So that's just straight lying. But there's so many of us. Oh, God, I guarantee that many of you haven't paid attention to how much you don't honor who you are. So instead, you try to be what people want you to be. You try to be what your wife wants you to be, your husband wants you to be, your mother wants you to be, your partner wants you to be. Anybody can relate to this? So you don't quite say the truth. You say a version of the truth. So you behave a little inauthentically. Why? To get their approval, to get them to love you. Now I understand it's a survival thing. And I don't want to make it that it's this bad and horrible thing, but there's a stress to it, and it has you not be you. And if I can't love you being you, then why do you even want me to love you? Why do you want someone to love you if it's really not the you? You hear me? So pay attention. Where are you saying the things that you say just so you don't annoy someone to get their approval? And all varieties of that. Number 2, we must mind our mind. Now, the mind in science of mind is a gigantic conversation. I'm only referring to the 10%, the 7 to 10%, the gatekeeper of your mind, the place where you are awake, the place where you choose, the place where you make choices about how to engage the world. There's so many secrets there, even in that 10%. There's so many places where you learn about who you are, where you find out about your conditioning. I mean, if you're someone who consistently has to drive down the same road every time you come to church, pay attention to that. Because anytime we are in habits, anytime we are in patterns, we go to sleep. Do you always sit at the same seat in your house? Oh, I know you do. I've tried moving him. It was not possible. But what happens is it's kind of cute, but it has you go to sleep. Because you don't notice what you don't notice when you're on automatic. So a large part of waking up is to mind your mind. Don't just think about what you're thinking. Pay attention to what you're thinking. Do you understand? And that alone will have you see who you are. What have you adopted and what have you chosen? Where are you doing life by default and where are you doing life by choice? That's an important thing to pay attention to. Number 3, watch your mouth. Watch your mouth. Not just what goes in, which is all about self-care and the body and self-love and all of those good reasons. But Jesus says it's by what comes out of your mouth where your life will be measured. I told you a little while ago I had a day, I can't even remember what the experience was, I slipped. I had a moment where I actually can't remember what it is. I must have forgiven myself because I know when I forgive myself I don't keep it stored. But I had a moment where I slipped and I said something. And I felt it immediately. What comes out of our mouth is toxic if we're not minding our mind and we have a disconnect between our mind and our mouth. I'm not talking about joking around, having fun. I'm not even talking about cussing. I don't mean that. I mean unkindness. Unkindness, which ties into 4. Be kind or shut up. You will never regret being kind, even if you... Now this goes back to number 1 about being inauthentic. Right? This is where it gets all kind of complicated. But I would rather be kind to you than authentically tell you what's on my mind. You see that? It gets a little complicated. Because once who I am, if I think that who I am gets to be dumped on who you are, there's something wrong with that. In my mind, kindness should always trump. Wow. Didn't mean that at all. But it should always trump truth. I have to analyze that later. But kindness should always come first. If in doubt, be kind. If in doubt, be quiet. If in doubt, say nothing at all. Why? Because you can live with yourself more when at least you're kind or you've said nothing. You feeling me? I mean, can you think about the last time you said something, you're like, that really wasn't necessary. And I got to tell you, people in relationships, we just do it too often. We do it too often. And not just partner relationships or husbands and wives, even friendships, parents and children. That's where we are the laziest. That's where we're not minding our mind, we're not minding our mouth, and we're not being kind so often. Why? Because they live with you. No, that's still not a good enough reason. And when we're practicing metaphysics, the key role is to not do anything that we regret. And we'll get to that at the end. Okay, number 5. I've heard it 1,000 times as a teacher. I worry because I care. Worry is absolutely, positively the most detrimental, negative, life-restricting habit you can have. And I, for one, Michelle Wadleigh, do not want you thinking about me in terms of worry. Don't even think about me. I'd rather you not concern yourself with me, because the worry is a prayer to the negative degree. It is, and you don't think about it because you think, I'm just thinking about her. I'm thinking about my kids. Oh, yeah, well, I worry about them because I love them so much. I worry about them, and then you have the reasons. No. If you love them, and if you care for them, and if you care for yourself, you will exercise your mind, you will mind your mind, you will mind your mouth, and you will speak and imagine in terms that are affirming. Anybody here think that worry is a form of love, or have you thought that? Nobody? In the past, yeah. And sometimes it still slips out. But when I'm really pretty good at this stuff. I'm pretty dang good. But even, this is going to sound crazy, but I'll just tell you how much the conditioning sneaks in. I'll be driving along very often. I'll pick up my grandkids from their other grandmother's house here in East Hanover, and I take them home because I live across the street from my grandchildren. So I'll pick them up, and the kids are being loud in the car, or they're talking and, babbling, doing what kids do. And if all of a sudden, especially with William, he goes from loud to silent, this little thing kicks in like, is he okay? Now, odd. I have no reason to think he's not okay. But some kind of conditioning in me sneaks up, grabs me by my heart, and says, oh my God, is he okay? And to the point where I want to turn around and look, but I'm driving 60 miles an hour, so I'm not going to do that. So in order to mind my mind at that point, I have to turn that immediately into some form of prayer, or to surround him in white light and to know that he's okay. And he's always been okay. There's never been anything wrong. Why it sneaks up, I don't really know, other than the collective unconscious, that the conditioning of humanity. I mean, so many of us are conditioned in that way. And I promise you, because many of you, you don't always come to me and tell me that something's wrong. Very often I find out, from a way around another corner. I'll find out that something's going on. I promise you that I never worry about you, but I'm always praying. If you're in my mind, you're in the midst of a prayerful mind, because my mind has now become a safe zone. I always wanted a sweatshirt that said I'm a walking, talking prayer zone. So that when you're speaking to me, that's immediately what happens. When I think about you, that's how I think about you. Because I will not practice worry and I will not practice concern. I just, unless it catches me and then I correct it as quickly as I possibly can. Number 6, start using your imagination. Now, what I know is that many of you use imagination already. But unfortunately, if you're not minding your mind, right, you're using it to contrary effects. The first time I was married, we were in a business partnership, and my ex-husband's partner and I did not get along. It was not pretty, and it was obvious. It was obvious that we didn't get along. And so I very often would imagine myself in argument with him. And I'd be going, and I would ruminate over these things. And I'd go to sleep thinking about this, and I would try to make him wrong, and I'd be fighting him with my imagination, like, what the heck is that? And all that did was create this toxic way of my being. And I had a major healing with him one time because I consciously chose to do that. And then, at that point, I was a young metaphysician. So one of the early things I learned is how to use my imagination to the affirmative. So I do not, if I catch myself going down that road, I turn it around. Some of you are not minding your mind, so your imagination gets out ahead of you. You must get out ahead of your imagination. According to Neville Goddard, who was a metaphysical teacher from the West Indies, he believed that imagination was a form of God. We have numerous of his books in the bookstore, numerous of his books. And he talks about using the imagination for creating all sorts of wild and wonderful advancements in your life, for healing the body temple. If you want to heal, if you have something going on in your life, you can't pay attention to what's wrong. You have to pay attention to what's right. If you want to be a part of a solution in the family, you need to imagine happiness and peace. And there was one year, we spent the whole year in our imagination doing that. The Aboriginals call it dreaming. We call it visioning very often, but when we do it consciously, it's visualizing and it's dreaming on purpose. So how we use that is critical. Do you hear me? These are the basics. And these are the ways that some of us slip up, even the people who have been around for quite a while. And by the way, and I know I haven't said it, but at the end of every one of these, you notice that I've put down, if you forget, forgive yourself and love yourself again. You don't mind your mind, you find yourself doing something screwed up, love yourself, forgive yourself, start again. You imagine something going wrong, stop, forgive yourself, love yourself, start again. Oh, you say something unkind, love yourself, forgive yourself, start again. That's the beauty of what we do. We can always start again. We can always clean it up. So, number 7, stop blaming everyone, anyone, everyone, and say that with me. Everyone, anyone, including myself. Stop blaming. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Do I have to say more about that? Because, man, that is a nasty, slippery slope. You're giving away responsibility. You think you have no power. You think someone has power over you. God, and I know this experience. I know this experience because when I was young, I didn't know how to deal with what I was feeling, so I just basically wanted to find someone to blame. And I see in my kids now, it's really funny. So my two sons were having a conversation. I know what this was. They were coming somewhere to meet us. I don't know where it was. Oh, they were coming to a wedding I was doing. They were invited to a wedding. Of course, they didn't pay attention to the invitation. They didn't write anything down. They didn't record anything. So I was like, Ma, where's the wedding? Right? So I had a text that had all the information. I sent the text off. But somehow they went to the hotel instead and went to the place of the wedding. So they got there. They got there a few minutes late, but they got there in time for the wedding. They missed part of the ceremony, but that's okay. But what happened later, talking to my two sons, and I won't tell you who said what about whom, because I'll leave you guessing. But the one said to me, he said, yeah, we messed that up. He said, but I was so surprised that went to blame so quickly. I went, oh, look at that. One catching that behavior, but the other one caught in that behavior. So it's a learned behavior, and maybe what I did is I taught it more effectively to one than the other. But it's something we do. We don't always notice. You don't quite notice. It's like blaming the political system for how you're feeling. Oh no, you're feeling what you're feeling. It has nothing to do with anybody. Anybody ever. So when we stop that energy, what happens every time we cease blaming? We begin to become more potent and more powerful. Number 8, cease judging. Remember a while ago we talked about remain curious? So when you feel that knee-jerk to judge someone or something, instead become curious. Remember this? I wonder why. Yeah, do that. I wonder why. See, that's so light. That is so light. That is so manageable compared to, such a different energy. And then you get to ask a question. And maybe it's appropriate for you to ask the other person, and maybe it's not. Maybe you're going to deal with it all within. But at least if you ask that question, you could say to them, Donald, can you tell me why that happened, or why you said that, or why you did that? Now there's a conversation. That is a loving way to be. You with me? 9, give generously. There are some people who believe that metaphysicians are self-centered and selfish. We have that reputation. And we have that reputation because it is believed that we don't do anything, everything that we do is for us. Now, and I can understand why somebody outside this teaching would think that, because what we teach and what we believe, that everything is us. There is no you and me. There's just me as you. There is me as you. There is, the experience of the one. So there's no action I can take that I'm also not going to experience. So when I tell you to be kind, why? Because you're going to feel better. When I tell you to stop blaming, why? Because you're going to feel better. Now, you don't do it only because you're going to feel better, but there's no way you can feel better where everyone around you doesn't benefit. It isn't all for all. It's all for all. It really is. So it's not about being self-centered, but it's about being in the center of the self, and the self that is God. Right? That's what that is. So your center and my center, there's only one center. My heart and your heart, there's only one heart. And so when we give into that one heart, and that's what we experience, and God, this has been so freeing for me. For years and years and years as a minister, it's been very difficult for me sometimes when there's it seems like there's fragments within my own community, and there's people that don't talk to each other, and maybe Tony comes and because she has an issue with whoever, with Bill. And what used to happen is I would listen to Tony's thing, and I would be empathizing with her. And then maybe I'd talk to Bill, and I'd be empathizing with him, and I'm like, I know they're not both wrong, and they can't both be right, but maybe there's no right or wrong. And at one point, somewhere, I started to learn how to find the innocence in all of it. And when I found the innocence, now I could just say, oh, just go talk to each other. Let's go figure this out. And there's a freedom and there's a love that is so, can somebody get me a piece of tape? Could you get me a piece of tape, please? There's a freedom that comes when you stop finding fault and you stop blaming and you stop judging. I don't think any one of us screw up on purpose. I don't think any one of us are really unkind on purpose. I think you're fearful. I think you're upset. I think you have something going on in your life. Thank you, darling. But I don't really think you're unkind on purpose. I don't think you're out of integrity on purpose. I don't think that you forget to do something on purpose. I don't think you wake up in the morning and say, screw them. I don't really believe that that's on your mind. You might wake up and there's something going on. Maybe you didn't communicate what was going on. And that's always what I'm encouraging. I want to see what number 10 is. I always want to see what's going on. But the fact is, so when we give generously, it is to give of yourself, give of your heart, give of your... And God, I didn't even mean to look at Donald, but we all know Donald is the epitome of just giving. And that there's many people here, but he's the active one. He's the one out there. He's the one on Sunday morning. He's the one doing the leaves. He's the one doing the lawn. So he's just a very visible. But we have so many people. And what happens when you give that generously, everything opens up in your life. Your money opens up, your heart opens up, your relationships open up, everything opens up. And for those of you who are struggling financially, give more than what you think you can give. You have your amount, go a little bit more. Why? Because it stretches your belief in yourself. It stretches what you believe you can do. You even with seva, with service. Here's the most loving question. And I've been learning to ask this when someone calls me up and I don't know what they want. And so my question now is, how may I serve? And boy, that conversation goes way different than, what do you want? What do you want? No. How can I serve? And everything on that phone call softens immediately. And the last thing is create, my nephew here, you have a rubber band on your wrist? He loves to wear these rubber bands. I personally hate the rubber bands. He loves them. He thinks that's great. He loves to use them as reminders for things. You ever hear this thing where you pull it to snap? That thing hurts. I have no desire for that. However, we got some other rubber bands here going on, reminders. Well, actually, my tattoos are I guess that hurt too, but it only hurt once, though. It doesn't hurt on and on. And my reminders are ease and grace. So whenever I'm doing something, obviously I see the inside of my wrists all the time. Create a reminder, and create a reminder to forgive yourself. Create a reminder to love yourself. I want to go back to forgiveness too, especially since that's the book of the month. Forgiveness is at the heart of all of this. You cannot practice forgiveness too much. You cannot. Now, there's some younger people in the room, but there's some of us who have passed through a number of decades. Some of us, in the later decades, continue to suffer from things that happened in earlier decades, right? Why? I ask you why. Why? Because we didn't mind our mind, because we weren't at choice. And I'm telling you, one of the keys to changing that pattern is to forgive yourself for carrying it forward. You and I keep those things alive. You and I, no one else. And then that goes back to not blaming. You see? So there's a thread through all of these. But if you did nothing but for the next, from now to the end of the year, commit to and practice these 10 metaphysical tips. These 10. Now there are so many more we could have spoken about, so much more. But if you do nothing but commit for the next, till now to the end of the year, honestly, I guarantee that there will be shifts and movement and a lightness that will come into you, because you will cease creating things that you have to regret. God, I don't know about you, I hate regret. I dislike when I do slip and something comes out of my mouth and I got to fix it and clean it up. So what I have learned and I have exercised meticulously now for a number of years is how not to do things that I have to clean up, because I want to be a safe zone, and I want you to know me as a walking, talking prayer zone, so that when you speak within my listening, as long as I can hear you, it lands on safe ground. God, that makes you a beautiful, potent place to be. That makes your world, your inner world, and your outer world a soft and wonderful place to be. And that's how you get your MBA. So if you practice between now and December 31st, you can all have your MBA. Now, what's really funny, and I didn't know this, although Elaine had told me that you had mentioned it to me, but it didn't record in my mind, and then I came upon it. There's this great book. I think it's a great book. Some of you will look at it like, oh, really? And it's something about being a badass, by Jen Sincero. And I have it as a book on tape. I love her. I love her. She cusses through the entire book, and she's like totally my girl, That's wrong, but anyway. That's not quite what I meant. But she's light, and she laughs at herself, and she makes fun of it, and it's just great. It's all the metaphysical things tied up in one book. So we have it in the bookstore. You might want to pick it up. If you want the light, like metaphysics light, a softer version of it, her book is it's a great book. I like listening to her. She actually recorded her own book, so it's fun to hear who she is. But it's the steps are simple. It's the depth that becomes the greater challenge. And that follows up. As soon as you stop making things you have to regret, you start to go deeper. One follows the other. Just elementary school, middle school, high school, college, post-grad, same thing. And I know some of you have been around for a long time, but you might still be making some of these little mistakes. Clean them up. Forgive yourself. You're worth it. I think you're worth it. Let's treat around this. If you will, hold the hand of somebody. Oh, I love the efforting. It's so great. The chairs, though. Oh, so with a sense of sweetness, we lean into a vibration of good and very good. There is a love that is here. It's here now. It's here every day. It is here in this room because of who we are, who we choose to be in the world. Oh, it is good. It is glorious. It is beautiful. It is who you are. By any name, whether it's the presence of God or life or energy, love, universal mind, by any name, it is you. And it is beautiful. And you are worthy of the good. You are worthy of the love. You are worthy of success. You are worthy of health. You are worthy of being deliriously happy. You are worthy of every single aspect of good that could be imagined. I believe in you and your ability to surrender your woes and to pick up the charge of being fully alive, of minding your mind, of ceasing the habits that would have your life be restricted. I believe in you and your ability to do this. This is good and so very good. And there is a bounty of love that surrounds us right here and right now. I trust in this process. I trust in the unfolding. I trust in your willingness to be full and alive. I believe in you. And I believe in the presence of God that dwells within you. And for this beauty and so much more, I am so grateful. And I surrender this word to love and to law. And so it is. Thank you.